Welcome to a new episode of TRVC. Today I have as guest Serkan Ünsal, who's the founder of Startups.watch, Crunchbase of Turkey. So it's great to have him on the show. It was a great insight into welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking the time today. And let's get into Startups.watch and then your insights into them. But first, I'd love to kind of get to know you a little bit better. What was your kind of career path to, and what interests you about, venture capital and entrepreneurship? Certainly, especially when you started, it wasn't a kind of a mainstream path. So what brought you?
I have 10 years of corporate life, 2 years for Ericsson Turkey and 8 years for Turkcell. And I started my career as an employee of an incubation center established by Ericsson Turkey. And there was no word for startup at those years, but I was a member of an incubation center, Ericsson Creator, 26 years ago.
That was the Polaris Plaza in
Moscow? Yeah. And
Myself.
Mesut Yilmaz opened the incubation center. It was that old. And then I moved to Turkcell and worked as a product manager first and then business development specialist. And in business development, my last project was corporate venture capital. We have a team of 4 or 5 people. We worked on how Turkcell can establish a corporate venture capital firm in 2008. And that project failed because the Turkcell committee rejected our project because they said that startup, they didn't name it as startup, but they said that small companies have different DNA. We have different DNA. We can't invest to small companies because we changed them and we failed them. For that reason, they rejected. And then I quit my job and started my first startup, Dakick, the event recommendation platform.
Of course, Cenk Bayraktar, who was at Turkcell and left and created Revo afterwards. So there was
I think they are the second team who works on corporate venture capital in Turkcell. We are the first team. We failed. And then Cenk Bayraktar started that project. And it's again rejected, and then he established Revo Capital. I first established my first startup in 2010, Dakick, event recommendation platform, and sold it to Turkcell in 2014. And while in Dakick, I visited Silicon Valley, and I saw lots of people are talking about numbers. They are all mentioning metrics, ecosystem numbers. And after returning from Silicon Valley, I said that, can I establish a statistics platform for Turkish startup ecosystem? And I created Startups.watch in 2015. Now it's 11 years old company with approximately 600 clients are paying client. Now I'm here.
Great. So you said kind of Crunchbase or PitchBook really providing tremendously valuable reports. You have quarterly reports, but obviously you have clients as well that you provide more detailed. But even just the quarterly reports are really a heartbeat for the ecosystem. And
actually, I inspired from Mattermark, DataFox, CB Insights. At that time, in 2015, there were 2 more platforms, Mattermark and DataFox. One is pivoted to another CRM-like company. Mattermark failed. CB Insights is still alive. Crunchbase is more like a database. We are trying to move from database to insights, but we are also calling it Crunchbase, Deal Room, Mattermark of Turkey, and Turkish diaspora.
Yep. And so, what you started out in corporate, what drove you to first start your own this is also a company start. What was kind of some of the motivation? You mentioned the idea behind Startups.watch is you saw that in Silicon Valley they had access to kind of data, and that is there was it just kind of in the air at Turkcell, or what think of going into entrepreneurship?
I have a background of 4 or 5 years of product management, and I love building products from scratch. For that reason, I thought that it's great to create a company from scratch with my own idea. This is one of the reasons. And second reason is I learned a lot of things about venture capital, corporate VC in 2008 and 2009. But I'm a little bit stupid in those times because there was no corporate VC or VC. I am aware of all terminology, all how it works, but there was no VC, there was no angel network, and there was no corporate VC. But I am lucky, very lucky, because in 2010, Marcafoni, Peak Games, Trendyol, they raised their first money from different VCs, and our VC-backed ecosystem started in those years. For that reason, I was at the beginning of VC-backed ecosystem when I quit my job. That's why I'm calling myself lucky, because if I quit 1 year ago, maybe I will fail because I raised money in my first startup. If I quit my job 1 year ago, I couldn't raise money, and I will return to Turkcell, I think.
I think so. I mean, certainly being at the right place at the right time is important, a role. But so you're saying you might have another alternative path might have been you could have raised a fund in sort of the 2008, 2009 timeframe. You certainly would have been one of the first. I do see that as well, that there's a lot of...
It was a growth like corporate venture capital fund because actually we have an idea what we can invest, which companies we can invest. I still remember those companies. All are growth stage companies. For example, Türk Ticaret.net. Our idea was investing Türk Ticaret.net, Pronet, and another company. All are not idea stage. But after 4 or 5 years later, Pronet raised and then acquired with a lot of money. Maybe it's a good investment, good bet for us.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that they talk about these days is that kind of growth stage is missing. There's a lot of people that's focused on early stage, and because a lot of funds were created that each very small, and so if you have a small fund drawn early stage investment, now there's Oleka Capital kind of filling that gap, the growth stage capital. Of course, back in those days, private equity, there's a little bit of overlap between growth stage venture capital and the private equity. I think Pronet, it was more of a private equity investor there, so there was some interest in it. Fascinating. Who knows what would have happened? Startups.watch, we would have Serkan Ünsal. Yeah, it's fun to
I'm not planning to move to another side of the table because I like building things. For example, if I establish a VC fund, I will definitely fight with the founders, and it's not a good thing because I'm always focused on UI, UX, etc. For that reason, it's not good for founders to work with a product guy in VC side. For that reason, I will always stay in founder side or product guy side.
But product is an area that I'm very, very interested in. I think it's become more known now, but for a long time was, especially in Turkey, not understood the critical importance of it, key to tech companies. We're talking about Cenk Bayraktar. Cenk Bayraktar was the head of product at Turkcell. Were you there at the same time as him, or actually before?
Yeah. He was responsible from partnering, business development in a small period of time in technical side. But we are mainly focused on business development. But our department moved to Cenk Bayraktar's team after, I think, 2 years later. But we are very neighbor departments.
Because that sounds like it was very ahead of its time or visionary at Turknet to have kind of product management. I mean, product management for tech was not very common in Turkey until very recently. Now it's still...
Actually, I have a ebook for digital product management. I think I wrote it 8 or 9 years ago, and it's available in PDF file because there was no product management book in Turkey about digital products like website or mobile app, etc. After that, product management become a little bit more popular. I am right now seeing lots of product management groups, meetups, etc. Yeah. But in those times, there was no source.
Ebook is in Turkish?
Yeah.
And I'll check it out. Is it still available?
I have 4 books. 2 of them about startup ecosystem. One is about Silicon Valley. I visited in 2012 and visited 26 VCs and startups in Silicon Valley. And I wrote my thoughts about Silicon Valley to understand, are we going the right direction or the wrong direction? I saw we are in the right direction, but we are not talking about too much numbers, metrics, etc. And we are very behind in scaling. But we were at the right direction in those times.
List them in the comments as well. Dwell a little bit more on product, just an area I care about. It's interesting. You were saying for startup, having an investor who's a product person, you're saying can cause some friction. I mean, it's interesting. It's one thing that I think also as a product person myself, actually, maybe it's the same thing kind of you're saying. When you're, for a startup, it's too early actually to create a product practice because the founder kind of product. A startup hires a product kind of weird because actually the founder needs to be doing that.
My thought about founder-investor relation is if a founder doesn't ask anything, don't say anything about what he is doing.
Okay, so wait for the founder for advice.
Then. Because when you say something, the founder about product growth, etc., then it becomes the VC's product, not the founder's. But if things are going down, you have to say something about. If everything is going well, then no need to speak.
Leave well enough alone. So let me ask you a little bit more about Startups Watch and your latest report, and a little bit more there. I mean, we talked it's an analytics, but is there? I mean, what's your kind of vision? Where do you see Startups Watch going?
Actually, I didn't start it with a vision in startups. I just thought that it should be a subscription-based platform. Our potential clients, customers, I should have some network. And I started with those criteria, and I built Startups Watch inspired by DataFox Metrimark. But I didn't think that I should create a $100 million company or something. And I am still calling it not a startup. It's a lifetime business because I projected my financials as it can go at most $10 million revenue company, not bigger than that. For that reason, I started with small thinking, just with a business model, and I should have a network for those potential clients because I have two more ideas. One is about health tech, one is about edutech. And I thought that I don't have a network in health. I am just visiting doctors when I am ill. And for edutech, I don't have any infrastructure network, etc. But since I have a previous startup, I have a network of VCs, angel networks, angels. For that reason, I thought that it's great to create a business in those networks. So I created Startups Watch. Actually, every year I am thinking that I should build the same thing in Poland, Southeastern Europe, Iran, Azerbaijan, etc. But I am always stopping at in some countries, they don't have enough activities, VC activities, like Greece, Bulgaria, etc. For example, in Greece, some months there were no deal. In Turkey, every week there was a deal. And in Greece, there are a little amount of VC funds funded by EIF or EU funds. There is no activity, there is no client, or there is no activity. For that reason, I am still in Turkey and Turkish diaspora. But I'm still sometimes thinking that because I am seeing some signals about Azerbaijan, Asian side, sometimes Poland, sometimes Egypt, but I'm still just in Turkey right now.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you think of the funds founded by Turkish VC funds or VC funds founded by Turkish venture capitalists, a lot of them have gone regional. It's a good point that there's probably there. Each one of those is small enough that it's hard for them to create their own kind of analytics platform. But MENA, there's another INSEAD alum, Bahosi, I don't know how to last name.
Magnet. Yeah. I talk with Magnet guys.
I'm constantly upset at them that they don't include Turkey, but maybe it's better because you're already good.
Actually, they tried to enter the Turkish market, and I said to Philip that you can acquire us if you want to enter the Turkish market, but he has not so much money, and he's trying to raise Series A round. He failed to raise Series A round, and he's still trying to raise in seed, post-seed state. And I don't like their platforms, actually. I like and mostly inspired by Dealroom Invest in Europe and PitchBook. PitchBook is more like a later stage platform, but it's a very great platform. For that reason, I'm more inspired by Dealroom and PitchBook. But in Southeastern Europe and MENA, there is a lack of great platform. But as I said before, there is not so much activity.
So one last thing on that, on platform, you're a product background, you pay attention to the UX, you've really created a platform there with rich ability to pull numbers in different queries. And you want to talk a little bit about all the features is the right word, but advantages that the Startups Watch platform provides?
I think our biggest advantage is we are focused on every detail of every investment one by one. There is no a program or API for collecting all data. We are one by one entering all data and correcting all data with Chamber of Commerce, etc. And we are converting all Turkish liras with central bank currency rates. For that reason, we are very accurate. For example, we are pro subscriber of Crunchbase to collect some data to compare ourselves with other countries, but their data is not post-moderated. We are post-moderating Crunchbase data for other countries, and it's very dirty. For that reason, we are saying that we are not dirty data. We don't have any dirty data because we are every hour, every second, we are collecting all our data with Chamber of Commerce, etc. For that reason, we don't have a similar platform like this focused on every detail for every investment. And we are sending our investment data to Dealroom, Startup Genome, Crunchbase, because without any money, because in multinational reports or global reports, once upon a time, our numbers were not correct. The Turkish numbers were not correct. For that reason, we said them we can send the correct numbers with all sources, and you can write the correct numbers for Turkish startup. And they accepted. And we are sending our data to Startup Genome. Every year they are comparing ecosystems. And the numbers in Turkey are from, and we are sending the same data for Crunchbase and Dealroom.
Super valuable. I mean, it's such a service that you're doing to the ecosystem in
Yeah,
Turkey.
it's a voluntary or patriot thing for us because Turkish numbers should be correct.
Idea kind of thing. I wonder, are you considering also moving into more analysis and data on the venture capital side of things? So, I saw in your last report you have some mention about how, but that's a whole rich area there. I mean, I don't know if there's any equivalent actually. I think there also the data is even more dirty when you look at foreign platform forth. But I mean, that becomes more and more important. The ecosystem is fairly new in Turkey, and there's need for LPs or potential LPs to understand which funds are out there, which ones are doing well, what are they doing, et cetera. And it's very dirty, the data. It's hard to really get a sense.
Yeah, actually, I always thought that I should be the CB Insights of Turkey, not the Crunchbase of Turkey. But because I'm also knowing the founder of CB Insights, I met with him, Anand Samwal, in New York in one of their events, and I talked about the platform. And I think they are more like a McKinsey of startup ecosystem because they are giving more insights, more strategy about VCs, LPs, verticals, etc. Because lots of people are sharing what CB Insights thinking about AI, future of AI, etc. But it's very hard to make it in Turkey because we are very cheap subscription prices. We are like $200 per year, and CB Insights is like $50,000 per year. And PitchBook is similar, $20,000, something like that. With some add-on packages, it's becoming $30,000. Dealroom is very similar. I think they are right now 500 euros per month. They are a little bit expensive compared to Turkish market, and it helps them to hire McKinsey-like guys and to create insights. But it's hard to make it in Turkey because sometimes 200 per year became expensive for Turkish client because paying some money for data is still struggling in Turkey for corporates.
Yeah, startups in Turkey face the same thing. I mean, Turkey's just a really tough market. They want the perfect solution. They want it pretty much they want it yesterday and it with, white glove service. And it's that pushes startups in Turkey. Talk about that often, sometimes in bad approaches or project work, but it also makes those who succeed kind of resilient. If you make it, kind of have a lot of resilience built in to be able to make.
Yeah, I'm always saying that if you are the survivor of Turkey, then you can be a great company. You can create a great company in US market. I think US market is easier than Turkish market. Sure. I'm always saying that it's 10 times bigger than Turkish market in terms of revenue, clients, etc. Because I'm always talking with some guys from US. For example, when they start a business, they are starting with 10,000 people. When I start a business here, I'm starting with 10 people, etc. I'm not saying that it's very easy because there's a very big competition there, but it's easier than Turkish market.
AI potentially a solution there for not being able to hire McKinsey types, but wanting to do insight. Does that give you any?
Yeah, actually, there were some AI like platforms, Crunchbase plus AI for sourcing, scouting, etc. But I'm always saying that if you don't know the revenue growth of a startup, it's still misleading to find the correct or the next unicorn startup. But startups are not sharing their revenue growth in Turkey. We try to get their revenue growth, but they are not giving their data. For that, it's hard to create an AI-like platform to scout. But I actually 2 weeks ago, I was in Ankara and one guy from ODTÜ said that I created AI startup finding platform and I'm finding the great next startup from social media. But I don't believe that it will find the great startups because you don't know the revenues, you don't know the psychology of the founder because there's a founder investor fit, there's a founder market fit, etc. Lots of criteria. But I have an idea about which companies can become the next success unicorn. And I listed my all criteria in a spreadsheet. It's not an AI, just 10 questions. And I'm still checking that is it working. And I'm sharing, it's not a rocket science. I'm always saying that if a founder graduated from Ivy League schools, I can giving them 10 points. If a founder created another startup before and I'm giving 10 points more, something like that. And if it becomes 70 or 80, I'm saying that it can be a great startup and there is no need for AI to do this, just an Excel criteria. And I checked it with some successful companies and it's like working.
It doesn't have to be rocket science. Okay, so let's get to Turkish venture and startup. You have a report out Q1, but let's start with what's your overall, how would you describe the Turkish ecosystem?
Turkish market is right now, we are heaven for pre-seed and seed investments. For idea stage, you can easily get money from lots of investors like TÜBİTAK Big Fund, some angels, etc. If you are raising $200,000, $300,000. But if you are raising more than $2 million, you can't see anyone if your metrics are not so great. If your metrics are very, very good, then you can find anywhere any investor in every country. But if you are raising money to more than $2 million, it's very hard to raise in Turkey. For that reason, we are always saying that there's a Series A crunch, Series B crunch in Turkey. In US, they were talking Series A crunch 10 years ago. We are talking for the last 3 years. For that reason, our all seed stage startups moved to relocate to US, UK, and some of them just built from scratch in those countries. Our diaspora is right now very good, but our Turkish startups, some of them saying that after 2 or 3 years, if we succeed in Turkish market, we will move to US, UK, but that time doesn't come. I see lots of 10 years, 12 years startups. They are still in Turkish market. They didn't try US market, UK market. But it's a little bit changing. But for VC side, since our diaspora moved to US, UK, for VC side, in first time VCs in 2012, 2013, they were 100% focused on Turkish market. Right now, some funds established their third funds like 212, E2VC, Revo. I think right now 60% of their focused on Turkish market, 40% of them focused on diaspora, Southeastern Europe, Northern Europe. It's changed and different from other countries. There is a VC type called GSF, VCIF, and I was always saying that we have right now a very experienced VC ecosystem. After GSFS came, I am saying that lots of first-time VCs, first-time investors entered the Turkish market, and some of them doesn't know what VC means. They are saying that we will make an investment, and it becomes a unicorn in 5 or 6 years. They are seeing that it's a straight line, but they should more work or learn more from tradition, because I heard something like that from a GSF fund. They said that we have 10 for portfolio companies, and we are thinking that 4 of them will be unicorn. I said that there is no ratio like that. I think maybe 7 of them will fail. 1 or 2 will grow steadily. Maybe one of them, if you are lucky, maybe one of them will be unicorn. But third time VCs knows very well right now. Luckily we have them. But for GSFs, they are still in the learning state. They are experienced traditional VCs, first time GSF funds. It's a little bit unbalanced, but it's going very well compared to 10 years ago, but we are still competing with Poland, Egypt, United Arab Emirates, not competing with France, Germany, UK. We are competing with emerging. Sometimes we are passing them, sometimes they are passing. But for gaming, we are very far behind all those ecosystems because we are very good in gaming, creating unicorn, creating global startups. But most of them doesn't need money because if their metrics are very good, they are just growing.
They can attract the investment. But there are several gaming-focused Turkish funds.
Yeah. And Loom Games, in 6 months, they became unicorn. It's great for us. And we have the second largest gaming studio in terms of numbers in Europe after London. It's great to have gaming because in the first quarter, UK, Germany, and France resilient with the help of AI companies, but gaming companies like Tail Monsters, etc. If we don't have them, our numbers was very low, the record-breaking low. But with the help of gaming, we are at least a little bit lucky. But we should have some AI companies raising $100 million, $1 billion. For example, for UK, I think $7 billion. They raised $7 billion in the first quarter, $3.5 billion raised by 4 AI companies.
So why is there such a gap in Turkey for AI investments? I mean, there are entrepreneurs in Turkey trying to do AI. There's a lot of funds who are interested in AI. I mean, there are some, but do you think have investors in Turkey been a bit scared of saying like, well, we're not going to, sort of self-censored themselves and say we're never going to be able to play on the global stage in this area, so let's not even try, or some other structural thing that's made Turkey fall behind there in AI?
Actually, for mobile AI apps, we are in very good situation.
Similar to the game studios, right? There's these AI app studios in Turkey. There's several that are very successful.
Actually, I checked some of them, and their founders are coming from gaming, mobile gaming, and they know how to grow an app. For that, it's very similar to grow a mobile gaming compared to mobile AI.
Kind of similar to
Yeah,
Bending Spoons kind of business model,
yeah,
very successful in Italy. We have
yeah.
kind of companies that are kind of similarly, that's the kind of similar space to Bending.
Yeah, actually, we tracked six mobile AI studio in Turkey, and two of them, their MRR became past $10 million in 12 months. There is no such a similar company in 12 months. They passed $10 million MRR, and they are successful, but they don't need money because they know the math. They don't know the stats, acquisition costs.
Subscriber acquisition financing, but it's not the
Yeah,
same
yeah.
as it's more debt, not equity.
Yeah, but for AI, our biggest example is FAL, but it started from scratch in US market. But we should have some FAL-like companies, like combining things, combining AI solutions, because we don't need to become the next ChatGPT or OpenAI of Turkish market because it's too much money. But we can make things together like a marketplace, API, aggregation, etc. We can create more AI companies with maybe more than 100 million valuations, but we are still waiting. I think we can see in the coming next 2 years because lots of AI companies raised seed round. Maybe we can see hope.
So, do you have off the top of your head some of the numbers from the last report? The total amount of deals, deal value, and deal count is down a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe seasonality is always low, but a little bit low now. So it was 64 million. Is that right?
Yeah, 64 million for 39 startups, but $30 million coming from Tailmonster, $10
Okay.
million coming from Finpool. If we exclude those, it's 24 million left. It's very low. I think one reason can be the war because we compare Turkish market with UAE, Saudi Arabia, UK, Germany, France. For developed countries, they are still going bigger and bigger with the help of AI. For UAE, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey, they are going down because of the regional effect of war. One reason can be that. One reason is last year fintech was in trouble. Lots of in Turkey. For that reason, lots of foreign investors, big investors, Series A investors are hesitating to invest in fintech, and fintech was the second biggest flagship after gaming. We lost one of the flagship of our ecosystem, but I'm optimistic about fintech. I'm still saying that the next unicorn will come from fintech, but its numbers are right now very low.
Tail Monster, obviously a gaming, and
Yeah.
Fimple is Fimple fintech or
Fintech, but they relocated their business to London.
okay.
One founder is still here, so for that reason we are counting in Turkey. But some people can say that it's not a Turkish company, but we are saying that it's Turkish.
I don't know. I mean, I like to take a very broad view. I think we should count all diaspora as part of the Turkish ecosystem. Maybe a little bit controversial. I mean, if you want to push it really far, you could say, of course, Research in Motion, BlackBerry. The founder was Mike Lazaridis, born in Istanbul. Mango, a huge textile company, founder also born in Istanbul. So I mean, that's kind of Ottoman era minorities who have left. The further VC is a relationship business. The further you can create these kind of strong ties and relationships, that benefits the ecosystem. I don't think, thinking very narrowly in terms of national borders really helps anything. I mean, yes, obviously you have to, track the data correctly, but I think thinking broadly in terms of the ecosystem benefits everybody.
There are some initiatives for the last 3-4 years about diaspora or Turkish white collars in US, UK, like Global Turk, Turks in Valley, Stanford Turks Association, lots of meetups I saw.
Yeah, that didn't really used to exist. I mean, just over the past couple of years, it's really taken off, and not just a one-time thing. I mean, recurring events. And I was just last weekend at the Turkish Student Association at Stanford Turkish Founder Summit, and it was a nice event. A lot of people from the Bay Area coming together there, and I think that benefits as well. It helps strengthen the ecosystem. So if you had a magic wand, if there was one thing you could change about the ecosystem, what would it be?
It can be about mindset. I don't know. It's a magic wand can help, but you don't need to be in Silicon Valley to create the next big gaming. We saw Tail Monster, Loom Games, Peak Dreams Games, etc. Location is not important. Some people are saying that location is important, coğrafya kaderdir, etc. But I'm always saying that you don't need to be in Istanbul if you create a great product with great, and if you know how you grow digitally your product, if it's a digital growth product, then I'm saying that you can create a unicorn from Gaziantep, Antalya, Ankara, etc. But it becomes easier when you go to Silicon Valley. If it took 6 years from Gaziantep, it took maybe 6 months Silicon Valley, but it's still about mindset. If I have a magic wand, I'm saying that location is not important. You can create the next big thing, next unicorn, next 100 million company from everywhere, because sometimes I'm playing games from my iPhone, and I don't know which country developer created those platforms. Sometimes it's coming from Vietnam, some developers from Vietnam, sometimes from Russia, etc. Mindset, I think, the first thing.
How does that happen? I mean, you mentioned you made a trip to Silicon Valley in 2012. Sounds like that was impact ideas as to what might watch. Do you think those kind of things help? There's some criticism that, sort of Silicon Valley, they call it theater or
Yeah.
these kind of trips that executives who go to Silicon Valley and visit a few companies and say, oh, we're being innovative. But it's true that having real contact with different ecosystem and people and things can really impact you. I mean, how do you think that kind of mindset change can happen? Obviously nowadays everybody can watch things on YouTube or read podcast or watch podcasts or
Yeah. Actually, I'm very inspired when I visited in my first visit to Silicon Valley, because lots of like-minded people are talking, meeting every night. I think I stayed 15 days or something in my first visit, and every night I was in a meetup, and everyone was in the same mindset, like-minded, and I visited some bars, pubs, and they are still talking. I still hearing some metric numbers in bars while drinking beers, etc. It's a very different place, but I'm always saying that Istanbul can't be Silicon Valley. Londra can't be. Istanbul is more like New York, like cosmopolitan, media, advertising, finance are focused on those cities, and Ankara is more like Boston, like deep tech focus, more engineered focus. Yeah, I think we should change ourselves, our mindset, that Istanbul will become the next New York, or New York of our region, and Ankara should be inspired by Boston. And when I was in US, people are saying that Boston people are trying to cure cancer. Silicon Valley guys are trying to like where you visited. They are comparing themselves like that. For that, in Ankara should be the Boston, like deep tech, health tech. Actually, health tech, Izmir is trying to focus more on health tech, but engineers are in Ankara. And Ankara guys are saying that we are not very good in marketing. For that reason, we are moving to Istanbul. They are relocating their business, but they should change their mindset and they should more focus on deep tech.
Yeah, even the different ecosystems within Turkey. Izmir is starting to take off a bit. I mean, the Izmir Yüksek Technology Institute in Urla has been around for years. I think that's always been a possible diamond in the rough, but starting to develop maybe a bit more recently. The Bilişim Vadisi opened near there, and I mean, I have a friend who's a PhD, he lives in Zurich now, works there, but he got an offer from, maybe this was 10 years or maybe more, 20 years ago, something, got an offer from İzmir Yüksek Teknoloji Enstitüsü and said, oh man, I'm not moving there. It's in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing around. And it's like this beautiful place. It's on the Aegean. It's like, it can be the Stanford of the Aegean. But back then, 20 years ago, it was kind of seen as, but starting to maybe come into its own slowly now.
Maybe I can add one difference with Silicon Valley and Istanbul. That's why I am calling Istanbul can't be Silicon Valley. It's like a small village, San Francisco, compared to Istanbul. For that reason, I moved from one meetup to another in the same night. But in Istanbul, you can't pass to Anatolian side, to European side in the same night for two meetups. For that reason, I'm still here for this record.
Well, it's even not like New York in that sense. That, I mean, New York, everything's in Manhattan, and you can go from 20 minutes. You can be from one part of the city to another part of the city. Istanbul is a bit more fractured that way. And so maybe the similar question let's break it down between startups and VCs. So what do you see as the biggest challenge for startups in Turkey, and what do you see as kind of the biggest challenge for VCs in Turkey, and opportunities?
For VCs, they are always saying that there are lots of startups, but there is a lack of great startups. For example, for our demo days, people are applying to our demo days, online demo days. Sometimes we are selecting just 3 or 4 startups from 50 startups. Sometimes some of them doesn't have how to create a deck, pitch deck, etc. Sometimes they are very not aware of how things going in startup ecosystem. They don't know which market they are entering, and they don't know how to present the product. For that reason, for investors, there's a lack of great startups. For that reason, they are looking Southeastern Europe. For VCs, sometimes they are researching for 100 startups. They are just meeting with 2 or 3 of them. That's the ratio. That's why I'm saying that there is a lack of great startups, potentially great startups. For startups, I think the biggest challenge for them was Turkish market. They are saying most of people are saying that Turkish market is very big, but I'm not. I'm saying that it's not a very big because I think maybe I'm wrong. 20 million people are with asgari ücret, working with asgari ücret. If you exclude them, we have a small group of population in Turkey. For that reason, sometimes Norway, Estonia, Lithuania, Finland are bigger than us in terms of if you exclude those.
Actual real kind of addressable market size.
Yeah. And it's a trap for us, for startups. And some northern countries, European countries, saying that our country is small. For that reason, we should start with globally in the first day. In Turkey, they are saying that Turkey is very big. We can start globally in 2 years later after we become a little bit successful in Turkey. That's the biggest challenge, I think, right now in Turkey, because we should exclude low budget people because they can't spend money after they are spending their rent and basic. For example, I can't say that everyone can subscribe to Startups.watch because it's a little bit product about VCs, companies with some budgets. For example, our API package is 50,000 Turkish liras, and it's too much money for startups. Just some enterprises are subscribing.
So it's about $1,000.
Yeah. For that reason, we should be aware of the real population with some money left in their pocket and start globally in the first day.
The Turkish market in general, I see it as very, I'm not sure if polarized is the right word, but you have a small amount of companies and people who are able, maybe not even willing, but able to pay very high prices, who sometimes do want, but then they want more like luxury and generally sometimes go, see foreign companies as the gold standards. And there's, a small slice that wants to pay a lot, but wants, the best in the world. And then very quickly a long tail of, as you say, 20 million people who are earning minimum wage who, is actually quite a large base, but they're willing to pay very little for something low quality. And that middle ground is kind of developed some over the years, but it's tough because you don't have that good middle ground. That's true.
Yeah. For example, if you look at some successful websites or startups in Turkey, they are all free. Onedio, Ekşi Sözlük, they are all free. And people with minimum wage can also become the customer of those platforms, but they are all free. If you have a paid startup or website, then the real population will, yeah.
Let's see what Aposto does. So there's a kind of a media company that has a subscription. They're surviving so far, but yeah. View on exits, often seen it as another one of the key challenges. So after we talked about Series A crunch, but where do you see the potential developing in the future for exits for Turkish startups? Is IPO on Borsa Istanbul, do you think, might become more of an exit route? Strategic acquisitions are super important in any ecosystem. Do you see Turkish corporates viewing that more positively? We saw was it EasyCo who acquired? There was a recent acquisition.
Yeah, PayU or Nespers acquired EasyCo.
There was another deal though this quarter. I think it was something else.
In near terms, or
yeah, I'll have to look it up. But it was in your report. There was an acquisition.
Ödeo acquired by QNB.
Yes.
Actually, if we compare ourselves with 10 years ago, we are in good traction because right now we are seeing IPO every year. Lastly, DOF Robotics made an IPO, and it's good for us because every year we are seeing at least one IPO. It's not enough, but it's good compared to 10 years ago.
Borsa Istanbul has many more IPOs per year, but in terms of a tech company, and there didn't used to be any tech companies really going public on Borsa Istanbul. So now we're having about one tech company per year. That's pretty good.
And for gaming, it was going very well. But for the last 2 years, if we exclude Loom games, it was a little bit decreased, but still going very well for gaming. And actually, I met some people from Singapore contact me about acquiring some gaming companies, I think 6 years ago. They said that we found Startups.watch. Can you find us some Turkish gaming companies with the valuation of $200 million to $250 million? Our budget. Can you find 10 gaming companies? We will talk with 5 of them and acquire one of them. I created a short list of 10 of them and they selected 5 of them. And before they contacted with them, I talked with all of them and none of them accepted 200 and $250 million. And they all said that we are trying to become a unicorn. $250 million is not enough for us. And I shocked by those answers because $200 million is a very good money. And some of them has no investors and $200 million will left to all founders, but they rejected them. And I talked with the Singapore company. It's a public company in Singapore, and they shocked. At that time, I said that, oh, wow, it's a great vertical for gaming. They are not happy with $200 million exit. For gaming, it's very different. Maybe they can accept right now. I don't know because at that time Peak Games became unicorn, Dream Games became unicorn. But for gaming, it's very different. They saw the line, the peak line from Peak and Dream Games. They tried to pass that line.
Exits are so valuable to the ecosystem that
Yeah.
you have to consider that as well. And you consider, you can start another company with the money you earn from exiting. Of course, it's, every founder has to make their own decisions. It's a difficult decision. There is regret at selling early, and there's people criticize the European ecosystem sometimes, saying that in the US founders sell a company and then started a new company, but in Europe founders tend to, if they make 100 million or sell a company at 100 million, 200 million, that they just retire. So there is some, there is flip side criticism there, but I think from what I've seen, it's and it's a difficult decision to make, but the value of creating an exit for yourself, for your co-founders, for your employees, for the ecosystem is something that should also be considered. Just even any exit is valuable.
For corporates, big enterprises, they are still doesn't understand why we are acquiring and giving $100 million to a startup. Why not we are building ourselves? They are still in that mindset. For example, after crypto regulation, some banks established the crypto companies from scratch. But I said that they should acquire some crypto companies, good regulated or well-created crypto companies, because it's very hard to establish a crypto trading company from scratch and became the next Paribu, BTC, Turkey, etc. They should have acquired some crypto companies, but they prefer to start from scratch. And acquisition mindset is still coming from startups, scale-ups. For example, Param, Papara, etc. acquired other startups because they are in the mindset of speed, accelerated growth, etc. For that reason, our companies, our big enterprises should understand acquiring is moving you to 3 or 4 years later in 2 or 3 months. They choose the long way and it's wrong.
Yeah, I wonder how much of that comes from, mindset from the old holding days in Turkey. I mean, it used to be before about 2005, 2006, there was very few foreign direct investment in Turkey. It really started taking off around then. And so, the large Turkish conglomerates had all the capital and they would just go into every industry. And I know that from our sector, from telecommunications. I mean, every large conglomerate in Turkey went into telecommunications, and so many of them lost money and had to kind of sell or close their telecommunications businesses at a loss. But that was the play in those days. Was any new industry, we're a holding company, we have capital, nobody else has capital. It doesn't matter if we understand the industry or not. We'll just hire a bunch of people and start a company in that industry. And that's changed since 2006. A lot of the large Turkish conglomerates, they've all focused on, what is our core competency? We'll focus on a few industries because there's now more access to capital and people who actually know the business can succeed. But the general kind of management mindset in Turkey may still be in that area of well, the important thing is just to be in a large corporate company and have access to capital. And then you can build anything kind of approach, as opposed to actually acquiring the talent that actually knows how to do it and has already done it and save you time in building it yourself kind of thing. So we talked about IPO, we talked about strategic acquisitions. What about foreign interest? Do you see, acquisitions from either VCs outside of Turkey? You mentioned the Singaporean company. I mean, how is the foreign view? Obviously, wars in the region doesn't help, but what's kind of, do you think, the view from outside of Turkey on the Turkish startups?
For gaming, they are very interested in acquiring gaming companies. I think maybe for mobile AI studios, maybe they are their next target because it's still a math game. If their metrics are very good, acquisition cost, their revenue or lifetime value. I think in the coming 2 years, we may see some mobile AI studio acquisitions. For fintech, very hard for this year for making investments from foreigners or making some acquisitions from foreigners.
Well, fintech is also, I mean, similar to telecommunications. It's a regulated industry, and
Yeah.
so I think there's some it creates some difficulty because you can't, you could buy a Turkish gaming company and they do business globally, but a Turkish fintech will be mostly, due to regulation, will be doing business in Turkey.
Maybe there are some rumors about digital bank. If there is a Western European digital bank tries to enter the Turkish market, maybe they can acquire some licensed digital banks from Turkish market because they have already some license. Maybe we can see something like for trying to go global digital banks that we can see some acquisitions.
And there are some Turkish fintechs that are, expanding to, you can't just go global, but you can go market by market. So moving into Africa or Central Asia.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, our fintechs were doing that thing, moving one by one every country. But last year they mixed all things. Right now they are hesitating to enter a new market.
Okay, great. But wait, so gaming, yes, fintech more difficult, but generally, kind of the Turkish market. I mean, so basically, it's tied to performance. Basically, is what you're saying. Is if company's doing well, then they'll be interested, but tactical rather than any kind of strategic interest in Turkey, perhaps.
Yeah, one more thing about acquisition, foreign acquisition is data. We don't have the data of companies' revenue. For example, a guy from US market, a company from US market, contact me about acquiring a genetics company from Turkish market, and they said that our criteria are they should have more than $1 million revenue. They should focus on bioinformatics or genetics. We are interested in acquiring some companies, but since we don't know their revenues, I just sent the list of genetics companies in Turkey with exporting from our platforms, the list of them. But it's a lack of data because we don't know the criteria. For that reason, we should have more data about companies because sometimes they are coming with data requirements like they should have more than $10 million revenue, $1 million revenue, and they have more than 5% PhD guys in the team, etc.
Is there any way to unlock that? I mean, when Turkish funds, these GSYF or VCIF funds, invest in companies, are they then required to share their valuation metrics, or because they mark to market, so update their how they valued the company this year versus last year, or is that still all very private information that's hard to access?
Actually, I don't trust their valuation, regular quarterly valuation, because every quarter, because of the regulation, they are evaluate their startups. I think valuation is about the deal, the round. It should be valued by the paying investors, not from a big four.
Something is worth only what someone is willing to pay for it is the real definition of a value.
Yeah, but for data concern, I think the biggest data owner in Turkey right now is Technopark, because the ministry of they are connected is requesting all import revenue for every Technopark companies, all revenue data, all number of employees, PhD people, etc. All Technoparks can see their own portfolio companies in terms of how much revenue they generated last year outside of Turkey, etc. And they can see the growth and they can share it not publicly but with on-demand requests. And they can see which companies are going well in abroad. And I think the biggest data source, but I don't know where they are using those data. And I don't know what ministry is why requesting them and how they are using them, but they have great data.
From the VCIF perspective, is it the CAP, the CPK also? I mean, they collect a lot of information on the VC funds, but also how much can they use it? Do they use it?
Yeah, they are just saying that our stock price raised multiplied by 2 because our portfolio companies, we valued them and their valuations become 2 more. And they are not saying anything about the startup.
If they're valuing it higher because as a multiple of revenues, and if they disclose, the valuation method and pull out the revenues from there, but they may not be very public with. But it would be an opportunity if they were. So fun conversation. We got into a lot of different tracks, but really fun to talk about them because you obviously have thought about a lot of these and have good insights. But just in the interest of time, to move on to kind of a last few questions. One is we talked about mindset. Do you have any books or podcasts or blogs that you'd recommend that you enjoy?
Actually, I am following more than 200 people in LinkedIn. I think for 2 years ago, my main source was Medium. There was great posts about VCs, startups, etc. But right now it's LinkedIn. There are more than 200 guys I am following. But it's hard to see all of them in one place because it's sometimes some are sharing it with posts, and if you don't look at your LinkedIn on those days, it's not popping up in front of you. I try to collect them and aggregate them via some cloudy cowork etc tools, but I failed. I'm still trying to collect all those information in one place and I can summarize things, but I'm still trying to make it happen because there are lots of great posts in LinkedIn from those people. I don't know their names. All are foreigners, not Turkish people, but I can list all of them, but I still trying to collect them. If I make it happen, I will create a blog or aggregated page, follow those people because they are talking much about VCs, LPs, startups, etc.
So maybe we'll look for afterwards if you ever do create some list, definitely share it in the comments or share it here. And then a kind of general question that I stole from another podcast, it's a podcast called Invest Like the Best. He always asks last question, which I like, which is what's the kindest thing, the nicest thing anyone's ever done for you?
I am still thinking nicest, but nice thing. There are lots of nice things, maybe not nice thing, but there are some people who are helping me to become the founder of Startups.watch. One is Alper Akcan. Alper, one of the first fintech founders in Turkey, and they exited in 2009, I think, to Mediterra Capital or something. And I'm not saying that he is the first guy I applied for some angel investment, but he gave me credit, and whatever you establish, I will give you some angel investment. And he gave me angel investment in my first startup. For that reason, he's a great guy. Without any deck, without any presentation, without any idea, he gave me money. And Soner Canko is one of the greatest guy, the ex-general manager of BKM. And he helped a lot in the first days of Startups.watch, because he helped me to make some network in banking, fintech, etc., and polish the value of brand of Startups.watch in the first. I thank also. And one guy in my not startup life, but for corporate life, is Altu Acar. He was my manager in Turkcell. He was a business development guy, and I learned how to develop business from him. For example, I'm very inspired from Altu. Right now he's in Canada. He has some startup. He was saying that when I was in business development team, he was saying that since you are in business development department, I will not say anything about what you develop. You will come with the business. I will just wait at the end. He didn't say anything about Serkan, go find an idea in edutech, health tech, etc. I searched, I talked with lots of people, I find business. He was like a VC in a corporate life. I pitched lots of stuff and 3 of them accepted, and we created business around them. And after some product managers started managing those products, I start from scratch, pitch some decks, and he sometimes accepted, sometimes he rejected, sometimes he said it's a stupid idea or something he said. So it's like a very tough VC, and he helped me a lot. And I also inspired by lots of people. I try to learn more things about everyone, like Sinafra. I learned some stuff from Sinafra. I learned lots of things from every founders. And I also talking with Ali Numan. And I didn't talk about our structure. Inveo, Ali Karabey Numan are my shareholders. They are not strategic investors. They are just thinking that it's a give back to our ecosystem, helping startups. So they acquired some equity. And I'm also learning from them because they are from different business. They are coming from finance industry. They became VCs and they are not product guys. And I try to learn from how VC startup collaboration or communication should be. I'm trying to learn from everyone.
Super wonderful answer. It's great we talked about VC being or the tech ecosystems being relationship driven, and it's great to hear these stories of great relationships you've had along the way. Thanks so much for taking the time, and thanks for all the work you do. I think Startups.watch really is doing an important service for the ecosystem, and appreciate the data and the reports you generate.
You're welcome.
To see more what's developing in the Turkish ecosystem in the quarters to come. As you say, it's come a long way, and even though we like to talk about the challenges a lot, I mean, things are going in the right direction. Things seem to be going well, so hopefully we'll get to see more successes to come.
Yeah, thank you.